This episode of TRS is brought to you by The Ben Heck Show. Today on the show, J.J. Abrams and Steven Spielberg team up for the much-anticipated Super 8.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Totally Rad Show. We've got a huge week today. We are going to be reviewing the new movie from J.J. Abrams and Steven Spielberg, Super 8, which we're very excited about. And then it's all E3 all the time. E3 starts today.
Yeah, we have big coverage. We are going to be doing an episode a day from the show floor.
Yep.
Get it right up that night so you can see fresh news. Real quick, guys, what is the one thing you're most excited about E3?
The funny thing is, I don't really know. I mean, I guess I have to say the Nintendo console.
Really? Oh, I thought you were going to say Star Wars Galaxies.
It would have been
Old Republic. I know so much about it, I just want to play it.
It would have been
You're gonna
Shadow.
get to.
Yeah.
It would have been Shadow of the Colossus, not Shadow of the Colossus.
Ico. Not Ico.
You mean
the other
Project
one.
Last Guardian.
Yeah.
But I'm excited, as I say every year, for the thing I would never even knew was going to happen, and then it like blows
Pokemon
us
Evolution.
away. Yeah. Or some racing, the new Need for Speed. Potentially. I always get excited about those things.
When you sit down in the device that they have there on the thing, and you're
right.
like, oh, I love it.
Oh man, it's going to
What
be a
about
great week. I think the Nintendo console, yes. Skyrim and Bioshock Infinite.
Interesting. Well, we got to thank the background.
Dude.
Tommy Pyle sitting in this
Amazing.
awesome Super 8
Possibly
background.
best background we've had, potentially.
Maybe for you. We'll do the votes at the end of the year.
I don't know if you guys saw the Super 8 app.
I haven't used it, but I've used the 8mm app.
Super 8 app, free.
Yeah.
Way better than 8mm app.
That
The
is such a smart idea.
And you can you shoot video and then you watch it. You have to pull down a projector. If you shoot the poster for Super 8 with the Super 8 app, shit happens.
Wow.
Amazing.
Yeah. So-
Well,
All right,
speaking
let's
of
get
shit
into it.
happens.
So we just walked out of Super 8, the new movie written and directed by J.J. Abrams, produced by Bad Robot, and under the Amblin banner. Mentioning that because, as we've mentioned on the show many a time, it is set in the late 70s, early 80s, at the time when those Amblin movies were just starting to come out. And it's about a group of kids who are shooting a zombie flick on Super 8. Whilst a train wreck happens and unleashes something sinister.
Sinister. Interesting you
We
said
all grew up with these movies.
Yeah. Formed a lot of our, I would submit, formed our imaginative lives.
I would concur with your submission.
I'm going to have to read that submission later.
I mean,
notarize it.
Even beyond the Amblin films, we think about movies like Explorers or Monster Squad, or I love this movie called The Ruskies. Like the whole the early '80s was defined by. Goonies is an Amblin movie, I believe. Yes.
Really?
So
that's why Drew
produced by
Struzan did the
Spielberg.
Yeah.
Alex.
Yes.
What did you think of Super 8?
I thought mostly good things of Super 8. I was not as mind-blown as I had been anticipating. I mean,
And what would one be if they were mind-blowing?
You know, it was like I saw hints of Goonies, of E.T., of those,
Jurassic
and there were
Park.
moments that I had, but overall it was not at that caliber to me. It was fun. I thought it was a good movie. There were parts that actually were pretty draggy for me, but I thought the kids were amazing.
Men were dressed as women.
Yeah, very
or that people were
draggy.
being dragged away by a monster?
Both men in dresses being dragged. There was a lot of dragging. No, there was a good chunk in the middle where I was just sort of like, okay, and the monster sort of boos weren't, they were sort of there, but they weren't. I never felt
scares?
scared.
Is that what the boos was?
Yeah, but like boo, not like
right, yeah.
this is scary, but like boo. And there wasn't much of me feeling like I'm afraid for people. It was more like, here it comes, I can sense it. Oh, there's the toilet being thrown at a guy's head or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think that ever happened. But
They have, yeah.
But the kids, they threw a lot of stuff. But the kids were really spot on. They nailed that sort of childhood running around with your friend, doing stupid things, you know. And I thought that was my favorite part of it, was the sort of relationships of the kids. The monster movie was sort of an okay monster movie. There were a couple things where I was like, you know, there's this massive train crash, which of course is in all of the trailers and such. And I thought that was a little overdone. I was sort of like, I don't think this is... It lost any sense of danger because of how clearly impossible it was. And it's not like you need to have it seem probable because it's a monster movie about crazy monster. But you lose me a little bit when it's sort of like, no, this would never happen that way. And it was only done that way to sort of heighten it, and in doing so, really pulled me out of that whole scene. So there was sort of no danger in that whole scene. It was spectacular. It was spectacular.
Gotcha.
But I have to say, my favorite part of the movie was the credits. Watching the movie that the kids made, that was my favorite part of the movie.
Yeah.
I mean,
was
yeah.
great.
I can't wait to hear what you think of this, because this was your most anticipated film this summer. The film you said
Maybe
would
the
make
history.
or break your summer. And I, for the most part, agree with Alex that I didn't get Blowhagen or whatever it was.
Mind blogging. But
Yeah.
Okay. Or blogging.
But okay.
Or
Blowhagen.
Whatever.
This
Yes,
does
Mr.
feel
Blowhagen.
This does feel like a love letter to Steven Spielberg. It is Goonies meets Jurassic Park meets E.T. And in a lot of ways, I love that about it. And it is, I think, wonderfully rich, sentimental, passionate filmmaking. It's a love letter, I feel, to J.J. Abrams' childhood and our childhood. And for a lot of the movie, I was really invested in these characters and these moments. He manages to get wonderful performances out of these youngsters.
yeah.
I mean, these youngsters, I sound like a grandpa.
You did sound really old just then.
I almost said young people, and then youngsters came out of my mouth, and I was like,
Wow.
what?
At least it wasn't whippersnappers.
I'm so glad you said it instead of me.
No, these kids across the board give magical performances, and they're in wide shots, they're in masters, they're in long takes. It's lovely and wonderful to watch for like 2/3 of this movie. What it teaches us, I think, is third acts are hard. Third acts are hard.
Yeah.
And this movie does not pay off in the way that I was hoping it would, because the question, the mystery, the setup is so delicious. It's tantalizing. He subscribes to that Jaws philosophy of not showing more than showing, and that is all so wonderful. I was taken along that ride and wanted to know. Then when we know, it's not magical. It's not as magical as I want it to be. And especially the end, which should have had me bawling, should have had a catharsis, should have had some emotional resonance. I found myself going, oh, I'm not affected. I'm not moved. And I think maybe it's because there were too many things being wrapped up all at the same time, all much too quickly. And none of it landed in the way that it should have. It wasn't greater than the sum of its parts. It was just the sum of its parts. And that's a shame, because I felt like so much of the movie was interesting and I was drawn along. It just kind of didn't.
Well, what did you think,
end
Mr. Daniel Trachtenberg?
You know, I actually agree with a lot of what you guys said. I loved the movie. I thought the Mr. J.J. Abrams certainly knows how to open a movie with emotional resonance, because the opening of Star Trek, I have tears in my eyes, and the opening of this movie, I had my heart in my throat. The first two shots of this.
Incredible storytelling, so brief and simple.
Yeah.
Amazing. It's amazing. It's to me, it's not really about what you don't see, because the lesser filmmakers learned that lesson from Jaws and are able to do that. But it's about telling the story through, like, not actors. You know, like we see a car moving in the background that represents what the monster is doing, as opposed to like an actor
God,
being
did you
thrown
see the
across,
car?
right, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like there's the opening shot is there's an image that represents a feeling. You know what I mean? The first two shots really back to back, awesome.
Yeah.
And all those things are like, yeah. So I love that. I loved the kids' performances. I love their friendship. It reminded me of Good Will Hunting because that movie so accurately portrayed friendship in a very realistic way.
yeah.
And this did the same thing with kids. There's a thing I learned, or I remember learning a quote from Steven Spielberg, or like someone, or I think it may have been Richard Donner on Goonies talking about, we learned from Steven Spielberg is he talks to the kids like adults.
Yeah.
And in doing so, in all those movies, the takeaway is that the kids are taken very seriously.
Yeah.
They're not portrayed juvenile. They're not there for juvenile humor.
Right.
And they're not. And the same thing with this movie. The kids stuff is taken so seriously.
You know,
and it's,
I would go one step further than that and say, much like a lot of Spielberg's movies, we distrust the adults.
Yeah.
The adults are scary and weird, and it touches that thing that we all went through at that age
Exactly.
of feeling like we can only trust each other because when you grow up, you get crazy.
And what's interesting about that too is that it's not like, it doesn't do the thing that a movie like Juno or other movies where they make, or Kevin Williamson writing, where they make kids speak wise beyond their years.
Yeah.
The kids talk age appropriate, but it doesn't make kids act like adults.
Right.
But it makes adults watching it remember
Yeah.
what it was like to feel that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I also had a problem with I was so on board with the movie, and the structure of the movie is very similar to Jaws, where it starts out as a family drama and a monster movie, and then ends up being an adventure. And when this movie breaks out into adventure, I loved it at first, but it lost its emotional core. And there's the train wreck incites the whole movie. And by the way, the sound design in that train wreck,
Yeah.
amazing.
Sound design of the whole film.
Yes, but
May have been the theater we were watching it in.
Yeah.
But it's the quality. It wasn't just what the trains were doing that you thought was preposterous. The sounds they were making train sounds. They were making awesome sounds.
I heard a lot of that.
But when it breaks into the adventure, there's another thing that happens in the movie, and I wish either that didn't happen or that was what the movie was about, because it
I don't
see.
It's vague
there's
enough.
another launch point that sends the kids on their mission, and it happens so late that see, the thing that Jaws gets with it is two things.
Yeah.
One, Jaws, the foe is grounded in reality enough so that when you break an adventure, we're still sort of. This introduces a really fascinating science fiction concept, but a little bit late in the game. Like, it's building
And
towards
too
something.
underdeveloped.
And that I didn't know our enemy enough.
To care about
I
the
actually
details.
didn't like the monster. I didn't like
Yeah.
the fiction of the monster.
I like the fiction, but it was just, it wasn't enough, or.
Yeah.
And because I almost feel like we weren't seeing it, and then even when we saw it, it was still sort of, we weren't getting to know it, and I feel like I needed to bond with it at some point to understand.
I had a sort of a bit of an issue with how bad they made the Air Force. I mean, like, I get it, you gotta have somebody, but every single person in the United States Air Force was an asshole.
Well, no, that seemed like
All
they
of
were
that
like a
is-
side project.
It's just
of
like
theirs.
E.T.
Yeah, but,
dude.
I mean-
it's just like E.T. That every adult, every authority figure,
like the
every
scientists are
every
bad.
part of
Scientists, yeah.
a group is.
Although he ends up being good in E.T.
It's all
Spoiler.
filtered through the kid's perception of it. You know?
Yeah.
I completely agree.
Look, here's the thing. It's a great movie. I think the thing that I came away with was because of and it's a little bit like what people have been saying about sort of lower your expectations, you'll see a great film, it is a great film, soup to nuts. The acting, the writing, what
just not
is
the
happening.
second coming.
It's just not the most amazing movie that I've seen.
Can you guys both
Ever.
tell me what you felt about the lens flare?
There was one time in the early time when they were setting up the first kid's train shot where I was like, why are there 7 blue streaks across the screen?
Yeah,
I love
something wrong with their image.
Yeah, and I love me some J.J. Abrams blue streak, lens flares. They're awesome. In certain situations, that was the one time that it really was like, I was like, these are just kids pulling up to shoot a thing. Why are there 7 lens flares? But it's also that's what you get. That's what he does, and I
Not only
love
that, but it's very Amblin-y, and it's not. I mean, there's lens flares all over. I was talking about this on the ride home. Transformers. I mean, they're all over every movie. I think.
They felt
I think
out
in
of place in
Transformers.
a couple
I mean,
scenes
not
in
Transformers.
this.
I think in Star Trek he did it one too many, so people noticed it, and as soon as people noticed it, they now label them like J.J. Abrams
I
flares. or
never
whatever.
had a problem with it in Transformers. Here, there were a couple moments where
mean
it calls attention to itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of them felt put in later, but some of them feel they lend
Some
such
of
a
them were
wonderful
amazing.
texture, and they
Some of them
they have
were
emotion
amazing. Yes.
tied to them.
Agreed.
So I don't.
It's an interesting
come
film.
away with that, feeling that way about it. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there was one other thing with those kids. Oh, what was, something occurred to me while watching this movie.
Was it?
The whole thing is that the kids are he's making models and they're trying to make a movie, and I realized why that's such a big deal when we're kids. Because at least I can speak for myself, but I'm pretty sure it's all of us. When we were kids, you want to be a part of the adult world. So you want to be in the army. You know what I mean? You want to be a train conductor or whatever, but you can't. So the closest you can come to it is by recreating it for yourself. And same thing with making movies. I didn't make movies when I was a kid because I loved movies and I wanted to make them. I made movies when I was a kid because I wanted that shit to be real. I wanted to be Luke Skywalker.
Right.
And the closest I could come to being Luke Skywalker is by recreating the scenarios in which you know what I mean? Like, you just want to make it real. And that's all up in this biz with the movie.
It's a really great film to go see. I mean, it's worth a see. I mean, that's one of the. This is definitely not a wait at home.
And
it's
just not ET.
I think we're very savvy, so we know that this is recalling something. I think a lot of people are going to go to the movies this weekend to see it, and they're going to be reminded of a feeling that they forgot that they had.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
I hope that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ho! Hip hip! All right, everybody, remember to stick around for this day in rad history, but first we want to thank our sponsor, The Ben Heck Show. Join modding wizard Ben Heck and his friends as they build and modify a host of amazing community-inspired creations. Be sure to watch every episode of The Ben Heck Show. Every episode.
You have to.
It's
or else you won't know what's going on.
It's every 2 weeks right here, revision3.com/TBHS. In this episode of The Ben Heck Show, Ben builds a portable 3D printer a la a MakerBot or RepRap, which of course everybody knows of RepRap. We had the MakerBot. Remember we had the MakerBot at our TRS in Austin making little, there you go.
That was awesome.
They make stuff from scratch in 2 weeks. Actually, he's gonna make it from scratch in 2 weeks to get ready for the Maker Faire in the Bay Area in 2011. Stay tuned, element14.com/TBHS to find out how you can enter to win said portable 3D printer and
I
other
love that he
builds from the
makes
show.
stuff and then gives it away. That's awesome.
It's smart. All right, we will see you.
Mañana.
Don't miss tomorrow for the start of our E3 coverage.
Today is June 6th, and on this day in 1984, Tetris, one of the best-selling video games of all time, is released on unsuspecting fathers, sisters, and mothers who now realize they may be addicted to video games. This was the thing that, like, my dad would take my Game Boy and be like, "Oh, this is video games?"
I would argue the best game of all time.
Maybe.
I think that people will still be playing Tetris in 50 years, unlike almost any other video game that you can mention. It is independent of the technology upon which it's made, which is very unique for video games. It is, I think, the most brilliant video game ever made.
It's funny because '84, I never played on Nintendo. I remember seeing, I learned of it through Game Boy, as you mentioned, because it was the only game that came. It was like the only thing to play.
Yeah.
And I remember all of us playing it that night. We got it for Hanukkah, and everyone played it, and everyone had dreams that night of the blocks. I mean, everyone has that dream.
Yeah.
You know who else has that dream? Matt Luis. Thanks for sending it in.